Hey, what's up everybody? Today I want to talk to you about range of motion. So for starters, you have two types of range of motion. You've got passive and active. So passive range of motion is using some sort of an external object to force that joint into a position. Passive range of motion looks like this. While active is using the actual muscles around the joint itself to put the joint in that position. Active range of motion looks like this. So let's start by talking about how we affect our range of motion. So we talked a little bit about this in my cars video and in some of my posts about use it or lose it. The range of motion that you have today has been molded over time. It's been molded by the activities that you participate in and the things that you do regularly and consistently and the things that you don't do regularly and consistently. So as an example, if I get a guy coming in the door and he's been a desk worker for the last 20 years and hasn't really done much outside of that as far as fitness goes, typically their shoulder flexion looks something like this. Or maybe even worse, maybe something like this, right? For them to go any higher, you'll see them have to arch back rather than be able to actually take the shoulder joint there. Now, that wasn't always that way, and as easy of an excuse as it is for us to use, it's not age. That has happened because that particular person has just gotten out of the habit of doing anything in this range of motion. But when they were a baby, at some point in their past, when they were a young child, they were able to get into that position under their own accord. Over time, because we haven't gone there, it's gone away, it's gone away, it's gone away, until now we have what we have today. The good news about that is that just like we helped to create that poor range of motion, we can start to create a better range of motion. And that's why it's so important in our workouts to just be conscious of the range of motions that we are using. So I've said this before somewhere too, that you can only get stronger in the ranges that you actually use regularly. So when we are in the gym and when we're doing something like an overhead press, if our overhead press consistently looks like this, then over time, that's what our range of motion is going to start to reflect. This is how the body works. You introduce a stressor, it adapts by either laying down new tissue, building new neurological connections with that tissue, or if you don't go into certain ranges, it will start removing that tissue, removing the neurological connections because you're not using it. Our body likes to be as efficient as possible, and if we don't have to burn calories to do something over here, then instead we're gonna remove all of that so that we can use those calories somewhere else. So understanding how the body works in reaction to what we introduce to it can actually really help us in the gym when we're doing our movements. And that's why we stress always going through a full range of motion with whatever movement pattern that you're doing. But even full range of motion can be a bit of a loaded term, because what is a full range of motion? Well, the medical community has one list of guidelines that they like to abide by, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you can do today. CrossFit has its own set of standards as far as like squatting depth and pressing overhead and things of that nature. And I'm sure other fitness avenues have their own set of guidelines. But guidelines are just that, they're just guidelines. We define full range of motion as the largest range that you can actively go through with that joint without any pain. So there's a couple key words in there that I want to break down. Actively. So what can you actually put the joint through on its own? Not using a barbell loaded with weight. Pain-free. Pain-free is really important. If you continuously work through a range of motion that is sending your body pain signals, you're actually working against yourself. Those pain signals are just telling your nervous system, hey, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. We need to limit how often we spend time here. And it's gonna start shortening that range of motion even smaller so that you stay out of that range. If you're feeling pain through certain ranges, then we need to take a couple steps back. You need to work with someone to figure out what is creating that pain and start the process of getting rid of it so that we can open up your ranges of motion. But just trying to push through it, it's not gonna happen. But even if your full range of motion doesn't meet a certain set of guidelines, as you're going through movement patterns, you still need to do the fullest range that you can do, because if you start to shorten that up more, then, well, we've already talked about this. It's just a vicious cycle. It's going to start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? If your push-ups are stopping short of going all the way down, well, you're going to be really strong in this little range, but anytime you have to go down here, you're not going to have that strength. Not to mention, eventually you're going to lose the mobility to even go into that position. Tissues are going to start to tighten down. Joints aren't going to want to go there. You're going to start to get pain, and it's going to take some sort of external object to even force you into that position. So it's very important that when we're in the gym, we're always working to our fullest range of motion. And then in addition to that, we have these ideal ranges that we're slowly over time trying to work towards. But what are those ranges? Well, in short, you just need to look at the things that you want to do in life. If that's a specific sport, every sport has specific ranges of motion that they have to be able to go through regularly. Baseball, throwing, catching, running, swinging a bat. While yes, there is a lot of variability in those movements, there's still a whole lot that's left out of that box that we call baseball, right? If it's CrossFit, well, there are certain standards that have to be met, and if it's just the sport of CrossFit that you want to be good at, well, then you just need to work on getting better at hitting those standards. If it's life, well, what things do you want to do regularly in life or be able to do that you're not currently able to do? What ranges of motions do those require, right? I want to be able to squat down flat-footed so I can play with my kids one day. I got to work on that, because right now I can only squat so far and then my heels pop off the ground. All right, well, I probably need some more ankle mobility. I probably need some more hip mobility. With that's probably going to be some more knee mobility. So this is the approach that we like to take here, is just look at what it is in life that you want to do, and then make sure that the joints have the prerequisites to get you into those positions. And if they don't, then you just slowly start working them so that you eventually do get to that position. But we still stay with whatever ranges of motion that you do have today. You need to be working through the entire thing, because you're not doing yourself any good deeds by cutting it short. Once you do know what activities it is in life that you want to do that you currently can't do because your lack of range of motion, then I think you start to build that range of motion up, and we want to be able to meet those criteria, and then we want just a little bit more. And that little bit more is just a little bit of cushion for those times when we get a little out of position or something unexpected happens that forces us out of position. And this isn't a matter of if, this is a matter of a when and how often and to what degree. You might not think, oh, well, I need a ton of shoulder extension. I don't do anything back there. What do I need that for? Well, let's say you live in a place where it snows in the winter and there's ice on the ground and you're walking out to your car and all of a sudden you slip and you fall and you put your arm down. Well, if you don't have shoulder extension, at least some, you're going to be in a world of trouble when that hand finally does meet the ground and all your body weight falls on top of that shoulder. So there's a lot of unexpected things that are going to happen in life, and obviously we can't plan for them all. So if you can just get the range of motion that you need to do the things you want to do, and then just a little bit outside of that range for the times when things go wrong, you'll be set up for success in life and whatever hobbies it is that you want to do regularly.